Okay, everybody, I am so excited today because I am joined by Halina Reijn, the director of Bodies, which is out now. Make sure you watch the film first because we're gonna be talking spoilers in this interview. Halina, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm in Amsterdam, where my hometown sort of is. I also live in New York now, but this is still where I have a little apartment, and it's a wonderful day. The sun is out, so it's a good day.
Yeah, I'm getting all good vibes from you. It's exciting to see, and I got good vibes from this film, and I absolutely loved it. And what's interesting to me that it is your second feature film you're directing. Was there something you learned from doing Instinct that prepared you for this film? What was like the key thing you took away from that?
Oh, I think that to me, collaboration is super important. That although I really enjoy being sort of the creator of something and a little more in charge than I was when I was acting, that I still am a true collaborator at heart. And that I just love, I think a lot of people think that when you're a director, you need to know everything. And I think the key for me is that you don't. You, of course, need to have a really good plan. You need to be prepared. I always say like a soldier, as if you're going to join the military. But in the moment, it's the greatest thing is to say, what do you think? Or what would you like to do? Or would you like to do it differently? And that doesn't only go for the actors, but also for, I don't know, the sound mixer or your DP, your cameraman, and I truly enjoy seeing other people sort of blossoming and growing within this sort of playground that I create for them.
Yeah, and I like the playground you create here for this film. And you talking about collaborating too. What I thought was interesting was that one of my favorite things about the film is the performances you got out of the actors here, especially in the final act where we're with this core of four. It's just outstanding. I'm wondering though, what is that advantage you have as having so much acting experience before directing? What could you kind of learn from acting that you kind of brought to your directing?
I think the main thing to me is that I know what it is to be in that position. And it, of course, it looks like this really joyful thing to do, and something that, it almost looks like actors want that attention and they choose to be in the middle of it all, but actors have so much shame. So I think if you're capable as a director to make them feel safe, and also to sort of guide them and to tell them, because these were the things that were told to me when I was very young, and I really enjoyed that. People say, like, the more you prepare, the better you know your lines, the more you're able to let go in the moment. So, and often, especially movie actors or film actors can have the misunderstanding that it's better to keep everything fresh. And for some films that might work, and to not learn your lines so well and to keep it. But I think it's really great if you learn the sort of, especially if you have a writer like Sarah Delap who creates music with her language, that you are really thoroughly prepared. And then when you actually do it, you don't panic because you think, oh my God, I'm losing my lines, or oh my God, I don't know what my blocking is. I don't know where to go. So the better you rehearse, and then you let go in a moment, and then you can even create space for them to improvise or to have their own ideas, because you're so well prepared as a director and an actor. Then you can both let go and really dance, that tango. So that's how
Yeah. Yeah, and I like you mentioned the improvising. I was going to ask you about that, especially when you have someone like a Pete Davidson on set. Was there a lot of room in these scenes where we didn't see even different takes you guys had of different scenes? Like, was there a lot of improvising going on in general?
Yeah, of course. I think I had very specific spaces in mind even before we started, where I was like, okay, here I'm going to ask him or her to do a bit of improv. So we would always do the scene completely as written on the page, and we would cover all of that and shoot all of that, and then we would always do takes in which certain people got like those liberties at certain specific times, so that they wouldn't be in each other's ways, but really could do that. And yes, he brought a lot to the table that wasn't in the script, but also Rachel Sennett and also Amanda Stenberg. Like Amanda, for instance, that moment where she talks about ableist, she came up with that.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
and some of them also had ideas, like, we'd come on set with breakfast, and then they would come up to me and say, like, hey, wouldn't it be more fun if I said this, or isn't it funnier if I do that? And a lot of it was actually improvised or came from them during the table read or rehearsals.
Yeah, and you could tell, and there's like a natural rhythm to the film where it just feels real too. So it really immerses you in that sense as an audience member, which I love. And I'm also wondering too, because you're filming mostly in same locations, did that give you the easier way to do things where you filmed chronological order most of this film, or did you kind of film
No,
all
we
over the
did.
place?
It gave us a lot of freedom in the sense that we had more time, because of course, if you would have to move between I don't know, if you have to drive for miles to another house or whatever. So we really restricted ourselves to really say, before we found that house, like, it needs to be one house. We need to find a house that is so big and so decadent that it actually has all those different rooms that Sarah and I created on the page. But once we were there, we weren't able to shoot in the chronological order because it just didn't work as far as the lighting, because as you could see, so much of it is in the dark. So we had to be super creative with light, because me being an actor, I've been on movie sets where I only shot nights, where you don't sleep anymore. And I just didn't want that for them. So I was like, we need to find tricks so that we can do half a day, half a night. And so we didn't shoot in chronological order, but it was absolutely wonderful to be all together in that house. It was COVID. That was not wonderful, but the fact that we were all imprisoned and that we were so close to the house in our little hotel, I think that really helped us to create that friendship, but also to create the feeling of being in that pressure cooker, that basically the crew and I and all the actors were when we were shooting.
Yeah, and I like you mentioned the lights, because I was going to ask you about that, because of a lot of it being in the dark, you had to get creative with the lighting in this. So was it a use of a lot of natural lighting that's even in the scene, or were there also tricks you were using with like artificial lighting that we weren't seeing?
We did use some tricks, but my DP, Jasper Wolf, he also comes from the Netherlands. We shot Instinct together. He's a genius, but he's a very hardcore European, which means that he doesn't really believe in all the artificial things. So of course, he would add little things, but he would really take pride in the fact that they would actually have to light each other, and that it was, we had moments because the house was literally like a crazy labyrinth. So we would actually like make it pitch black dark, and it was just crazy. If you would go to the toilet, you would be like, oh my God, where am I going to end up? So it was actually at times we truly got a little scared, but it was also very, very hard for the actors to have to lie to each other, because but besides the fact that you have to your lines, or you're reacting and you're emotional and you're whatever you're doing, and then you have to think, oh my God, I have to, because I have a headlamp on my head, I have to move my head a certain way, because otherwise my scene partner is not going to be seen by the audience. So they had so many different things that they had to think of, but being Gen Z and being able to think on so many different levels and look at 600 screens at the same time, they were able to do all of that. So I was so proud of them.
Yeah, and they all do an amazing job, and it's tribute to your great directing too. And I really like your choice of using a lot of handheld camera work here. What went into that choice? So when you were kind of planning out in your head how you wanted to film this thing?
I think for me, of course, there were a lot of challenges with this film, which mainly is the fact that you have one location, you don't, and you have all these very long group scenes, and people forget that. But this film has so much language in it; it's almost a play, And Sarah the Lab is a playwright. I come from the theater, so there was a big danger in this whole film becoming this like, radical art house, not accessible intellectual thing. So I think it was super important to us to keep it visually very sensual and primal and visceral. And that's why I asked Jasper, and he totally agreed to keep that camera style very handheld and just close to the actors. And so that, you really feel that you're with them there and you experience this whole thing. You start to suspect each other. You literally don't know anymore, which is also the truth if you play the game Mafia, Werewolf, or Bodies, or Murderer, or however you want to call it, where you don't know anymore what is true, who's lying, where am I? And this house becomes a character by itself that, you don't even know anymore where which room is. The map of the house becomes very blurry, as if you took some LSD. And so we told each other all the time, like it should be like a drug-infused trip. If, the moment that there's a moment in the film that Beast eats the cake and they tell her, I hope you realize it's wheat cake, but she already ate like literally half the cake.
Right.
And it doesn't really make her stoned, but it does make her go into this rabbit hole like Alice in Wonderland. And, and the rest is sort of a mental trip.
Oh, totally. I definitely felt that. And like you mentioned too, I like that immersive feel. Like I felt like I was at the party with them.
Yeah.
Also, was there any choices for you as a director when you look back that you were like the most hung up on? Like, was there anything that was making you like toss and turn at night?
Oh yeah. I mean, you mean for me, myself, like what I was nervous about?
Yeah. Like, was there something you kind of just didn't know which way to go with? Like, what was that thing that you were like, oh,
yeah. I mean, the ending, I mean, I don't know how much we can spoil at this point.
This is spoiler. Yeah.
Okay, spoiler. So here we go with spoilers. So for me, when I got on board of this project, I was very intrigued by the game, because I used to play that game all the time with my friends, and it was like psychological warfare. And I thought it was a great premise for, a juicy character piece. But the end at that time there was still a killer, and I was not interested in that because for me, not because I judge it at all, because I love great films with great killers or monsters or a haunted house or a ghost or whatever. But it's just not my style. I come from a very different background, so I'm more interested in human behavior. So the moment we had that ending where we were actually, we were like, okay, wait a minute. There is no killer,
Right.
that was the biggest epiphany, because if there's no killer, then it's just about reaction. It's just about human behavior. Is how do we react to each other? And then when we came up with the idea of the TikTok death, and of course, I mean, these things really happen, and that as sort of a metaphor for vanity and maybe toxic masculinity and competition, we thought that was a great sort of very banal but funny in a dark way ending. And that's when I found my key into it. But of course I was always super stressed out, because you can write this all down like, oh, he kills himself while he tries to open a bottle of champagne with his sword. But how do you actually make that believable ever? So
Right.
I laid awake so many nights about that. I laid awake. So, and the moment Pete did the take that we use in a film, we all got up and we were like, ah! like
that's amazing.
Like crazy seals, because we just knew, because if you don't pull that off, your film is fucked. You know what I mean? And I was super nervous about all the group scenes, just coming from another country. Instinct, those were my best friends, those actors. These actors I just got to know. I look up to them. I really, I want to impress them, but I also want to give them enough attention. And to make a huge group scene with so much language, make it suspenseful and interesting and juicy. And I just thought, oh my God, how are we going to do that? So yeah, I was very nervous for those.
Well, it's great because all these things you were nervous about, you pulled off. And I especially love that ending. And I love that it's different. I think it's cool as the audience member, you're trying to guess who the killer is. And I think we all forget that there's a trick you can do where there is no killer. And I thought that was so shocking and awesome. So also want to ask you, looking back, was there any scenes you were really your babies where you wish they made the film but had to be cut maybe for time or for any other reasons? Is there anything in your head that you were like, I wish I could have snuck that in?
There were so many. There was a beautiful long scene with B and Amanda. So Sophie and B, Amanda Stenberg and Maria Bakalova on the bed, just in the beginning. And now we only have the tail of that when Pete walks in and they're sort of making love on the bed. That was a long dialogue before, and also the whole section, the physical section of that was longer. And I thought their acting was just insane. But for rhythm, for pace, we just couldn't do it. But I love that scene. I will always love it. There was a beautiful scene with B, Maria Bakalova, and Lee Pace, Greg's character, at the pool at a certain moment when she just ate the wheat cake, and she would go to the pool to sort of get a little bit of fresh air, and then he would be there, and this really odd conversation between them that I love. We're probably going to include that when the Blu-ray or whatever it is comes out, DVD. So there's a couple of more of these moments. Also, they used it in some of the trailer, the song that they sing right before the big dance scene. It's a camp song where they say, "I'm strong, I'm smart." We have a much longer version of that where you see them in a crazy way dance and sing that song together. So yeah, there's lots of material that I would love to share with the audience, but you just have to make choices.
Yeah, totally. But that's exciting to hear. And I'm excited to see the Blu-ray come out. And on that topic too, I wanted to say to you, just as a film nerd and that community of film nerds, we still love director commentaries. And I would love if you do a director's commentary for this film or fight for the cause, because we want it. We want to hear it.
I already did it. I did it.
Good.
And I loved it. And I'm a little older than you are. And I was so surprised because, of course, when I was young, that was normal, and then it disappeared. So I love that A24 actually asked me to do that. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know it was a thing again, but I so enjoyed it. So yes, it's going to be on there.
Oh,
totally.
That's the best news. Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, because we just want more of that. And can't wait to hear that. Now, also, was there a scene for you that was the most challenging to film when you look back, that was giving you the most headaches, let's say?
The introduction in the swimming pool, because I made up this whole idea that all the characters should be underwater when they get introduced, because for me they're in a womb, blah blah blah. I had the whole, but of course the reality of that is that you need to, actors need to stay on the water in order to film this. So we had to make them heavier with weight. It's a whole thing. You think, somebody can just float on the water, but it doesn't work like that because they float up, blah blah blah. That was hard. And as far as acting, I think the big scene that you spoke about, like where, you know, the girls really go full out and Rachel speaks about her podcast and
Yeah.
Hala shoots her in the leg. That scene was something we all sort of like looked forward to, but also dreaded, because it was the longest scene ever on the page. It was like 15 pages long. It was crazy. And so we thought, how are we ever going to pull that off? And just to keep the humor in that moment, I
Oh
thought,
yeah.
oh, but it succeeded. And that's really because of them. They were so amazing, and they never got like tired, even though the day was so long, the night was so long when we shot that. But so I'm very proud of that. But that was absolutely a scene that I was like, oh my God, how are we going to do that? Yeah.
That's great to hear too, because that was my favorite scene in the film. So it's cool to hear that that hard work really does pay
Yeah.
off, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then is there one character here you yourself can relate to the most? Was there one that kind of spoke to you in any way?
Oh, they all speak to me, and they are all, I like to think, and I hope that the audience feels that too. But for me, definitely, even though people say they're unlikable, to me, they're all parts of myself. You know, I really recognize myself in Emma, the girl who's so in love with the Pete Davidson character and so obsessed. I can be like that. Like I have a really soft spot for a bad man. So, and also the way she's like, no, let's not play the game. Everybody's gonna cry. That was always my position with my friends. But I can also totally see myself in my last character, Jordan, who's so like, no, let's talk about like who pays for what, and let's really organize this, and everybody get a flashlight and get a weapon. And so I relate to all of them. And B, of course, me coming to the United States now, trying to live in New York, I totally feel like that outsider trying to make new friends at 46. Yeah, I am like, oh my God, how am I ever going to belong to this group? So for me, all of, and of course the older guy Craig is me too. Like, how do you play? Like, you know, me as a grandmother being like, hello, can I join this young group? So no, all of them speak to me.
Yeah, I love that. I love to hear the director having such a connection to their characters. Now,
Yeah.
before I let you go, my last question for you is basically what is the ultimate maybe feelings or thoughts you wanted the audience to have after seeing this film? Like, what did you want us to be like coming out of that theater?
Well, I think the first feeling for me personally is like, what? You know, because it's so, it is like on purpose, of course, nihilistic, lame, you could even call it. Like, it's just like a big balloon and all the air floats out like, and I love that. So I think, but I hope in the end that you had a good time, that you had some laughs, and that you maybe have a little bit of thought about, you know, what we are capable as far as group behavior, you know, how we sometimes just, I think this is of course more a dark comedy than a horror, but the horror of the thing to me is human behavior, you know, where misunderstandings can lead to something like this. And also just, I often compare them to a school of fish, you know, there's one goes that, yeah, the whole group goes that way, and they're not actually looking at what's going on because they're constantly glued to their phone screen. And when the Wi-Fi goes out, the demons come in. So I hope that it maybe will provoke some discussion, but mainly, of course, I hope to entertain people and just make them laugh and make them feel something and a little bit afraid, but also just this haunting feeling of this weird trip in this weird house, you know. So I hope they enjoyed themselves.
Yeah, hell yeah. And, you know, everyone listening to this interview, go see it again. Tell your friends about it. Make sure to see it in theaters first, then get hyped for the Blu-ray. It sounds like there's gonna be a lot of cool stuff with it. Halina, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Thank you so much. I love this conversation. It was really amazing. Thank you so much for having me. You're very, very kind. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate you.